Hi, this is Sam Botstein from MachineSkills.com. In today's tutorial we're going to take a look at how to use a simple drum loop with the effects section and especially the LFO section of Maschine Sampler in order to achieve a more interesting result. Here's what this finished sound sounds like. So let's look at exactly what's making this noise. So the dry sample that I'm using sounds like this. So what's going on there is that we have some cymbals and some busier elements. This won't work so well if you just have sort of a boom bap, like a kick snare kind of thing. But what we had here is we had just turned up this LFO speed to be exactly a quarter, and we've locked it to the clock, and we know that this drum loop is 95 beats per minute. And I've also changed the shape of the LFO, so it's a little bit complicated. So essentially, to get back to what we had, we just need to turn this pitch a little bit up. Now, before we go into all of this stuff about the LFO, let's just take a look at what's happening here. So one reason that this works, and that we can use it for all sorts of different productions, is that we have the snares landing on 2 and 4, despite all this modulation. The other thing that makes this work just a little bit is that we had the sample rate come down to about 17. And what that does is it sort of adds a lot of noise and takes away some of the higher end. As we bring down the sample rate, the Nyquist frequency, it sort of will act a little bit like a cutoff. Like, we won't necessarily hear things that are too high because we've lowered the sample rate. So when I have it down, you'll hear all of the highs of those cymbals, even the ones that have been pitched up from our pitch modulation. And as I bring this down, it's just going to take some of those out. Now we could even go in and bring in some compression, which would make this hit really hard. Now let's take a look at the sampler view, and we're looking at the waveform in our edit section here, and we can see what this pitch LFO modulation is really doing. Notice how this playback marker is not moving evenly across the screen like it would if we had the pitch set to center. Instead, it's doing this sort of seasick thing. We could take the pitch up from the 30s, where we had our original sound, up into the 50s and 60s, which will give us a more of a glitchy kind of feel. It does start to affect the rhythm in a certain way. While we do get our things landing on 1, 2, and 4, it's sort of nebulous what's happening in the middle there. We might need some other sounds in our production to sort of fill in the beat. When we get up around 100, it gets really crazy, and the type starts to matter more. So here I'm using the triangle. The saw is a little more unpredictable, and the random is certainly unpredictable. Let's hear what the saw would sound like. What we do have here with the saw is this continuing falling sound. So this is a really easy way to use just a couple features of Maschine Sampler with no effects chain, really no sort of use of the sequencer other than just a single note on the one, to create all sorts of different sounds using just a basic drum loop. So you can use this to skew more towards a sort of glitch sound or a drumstep kind of sound, or you could sort of do an LA beat scene kind of thing with more subtle modulation settings. It's also a good idea to start playing with these other effects that are built into the Maschine Sampler, especially the FX filter section, which will really allow us to create all sorts of different timbres for all sorts of different productions. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube for all our Maschine tutorials, and check us out at machineskills.com.